Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Sorry about that. Welcome
And children
to
of all ages.
and children of all ages. That's correct. I'll be Backlot with Lou and you. My name is VashSky, your host for this evening's ceremonies, and with me here is the one, the only, Lou Wasserman's ghost. Lou,
And thank God for
how you
that. If there were two of me, I'd be worried. Even if on IMDb, the two of us get a little, what's the word? Bifurcated?
yes, bifurcated.
Multiverse?
Well, you see, in the universe had to merge you two because it can't have two Lou Wassermans.
Okay.
But no, it's this today's show is going to be a little different in tone. We're going to try to be respectful, but also to try to, I don't know, be somewhat uplifting and get immersed into some of the history involved in what Lou, if you've been following this show, has talked about the 30-mile zone. And a lot of the 30-mile zone is going through a lot right now, and in extended parts of Southern California and LA. Lou, where do you want to start us off? I know you have a book that you want to share with us.
Oh, yeah. You know, I'm always recommending books to you. And I'm reading a new one, or it isn't new, but new to me. A biography, the first really comprehensive one of Otto Preminger. Yeah. And it's fascinating. I think you've got the still of what it looks like. But this is quite a story. This guy was a lot more complex than anybody really gave him credit for. He was, I think it's fair to say, a genius intellect. He and his father was a famous lawyer in Vienna and in Germany, and he was following that path until he decided he liked the theater better. But because of it, among other things, he was a real stickler for coming in on schedule, on budget. And when you read this book and you read about these wonderful movies that he made, which I'm sure you know most of them, it'll say things like, and he only came in $140 over budget. And I'm going, $140? $200 under? Not hundreds of thousands? Boy, were those the days, right? Oh, God. And him being a lawyer, of course, he really was interested in the law. And I think probably his best movie, which the genre guys will, I'm sure, get around to, although we've already done one of his, which is his war movie about Pearl Harbor, In Harm's Way with John Wayne. But he made a movie called Anatomy of a Murder with Ben Gazzara and Jimmy Stewart and Eve Arden and Arthur O'Connell and George C. Scott. And it's and Lee Remick when she was basically brand new. And it's kind of a sleazy story. And he liked to do stories that for either sexual or racial or other reasons would prompt the official Hays Code people to ban the movie so he could fight against censorship. And this one certainly did. And then the other interesting thing is, in the movie, the regular judge in town is sick somewhere. So they bring in a judge from another town. Well, who did he cast as the judge? If you remember the McCarthy hearings, I mean the blacklist, and you remember the lawyer who said, "Have you no shame, sir? Have you no shame?" He's the judge in this movie, a real lawyer and judge. And anyway, Otto was wild. Otto was crazy, and Otto was a genius. And the book is very worth your time. Look, who else could wear all three of those patterns?
Yes, that's true.
I mean, I know he played Mr. Freeze on Batman, but my God, that's a Joker-worthy suit if ever I saw one. But
that's quite the I don't think you're supposed to have
that's
three
contrast.
There.
But it works somehow for him. I don't think I could do it. I would look like an ottoman. Anyway, it's a great book, and I highly recommend it to you all. We were sort of thinking, because I keep recommending books, we should call this the Backlot bookshelf or
yes,
Lou's library or something, but we haven't really settled on a name. But
I think it should be the Backlot bookshelf. I think that'd be perfect.
Okay, that works. Then there's another one for your shelf.
There you go.
The Man Who Would Be King by Foster Hirsch. So
Throw this into the chat here. Oh, looks like my browser logged me out. That's great. I'm having.
I hate when that happens.
I'm having all kinds of weird machine issues here. So if I lose signal or something, I'll be back.
I see it in the chat, so it's there. Yes,
fantastic.
But anyway, and the other thing, of course, we might get it out of the way, and I don't mean to dismiss it that way, is the jukebox.
Yes.
We've been getting around the prohibitions on doing music without rights and all the rest of that stuff by picking other people who've somehow solved it or don't care. Mm-hmm. And this time it's a shameless plug, and in more ways than one, because I asked Vash, what's the next Genre Guys that's going to show up here on the channel for free after its 3-month sequestering as a perk for members of the Pro channel. And he told me it was going to be Airport. And I said, well, that's a great soundtrack. And so here is a link if you would like to get in the mood for that movie with this wonderful Alfred Newman score. Perhaps the really, because it was kind of the first big so-called disaster movie, it's kind of set the pace for the music for all the others that came afterwards. And it's a lot of fun. And by the way, the guy whose link I gave you, Soundtrack Fred, he has got the most amazing collection where he has put together suites of 12, 15 minutes from all of the great movies. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And he's a really, really, really wonderful source if you're in the mood for some good movie music. But any place, the funny timing is that the Genre Guys just last night recorded our take on Airplane as opposed to Airport. And I had known that Airplane was based on a thing called Runway 08 that was also written by Arthur Haley, who wrote Airport. Okay. But it was done originally as a movie for television in Canada under the name Flight to Danger or something like that. And in the real thing, the straight version, do you know who played the young fighter pilot who was called upon to fly the big airliner down when the pilots get sick? You know, the Hayes part in Airplane was Scotty, James Doohan, in an early role. So there's all of these 6-degree confabulations going on here, and they're kind of fun, aren't they?
That is absolutely fantastic. That is great. See, this is why we listen to the Genre Guys, and this is why, Lou, you're the expert.
When they did the American TV movie of Runway 08, it was literally the first made-for-TV movie in America, and they had Rod Serling write the script. And in it, there's a bomb on the plane, and the bomb is set to go off at a certain altitude. And so the solution to the issue was to land in Denver, the mile-high city, and be above the bomb's blow-up point. So that was kind of a fun twist. Anyway, meanwhile, back in Hollywood.
Back in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, we gotta get into it, and it's not the news we want to talk about, folks. That's for sure. I think this... There were signs that something could happen, and it could be really, really bad. But once these winds really kicked up and Ember started flying, it really, really, really got pretty bad. I want to go ahead and share you this, which is, it basically gives you an overview of, this was last updated, I believe, last night. So it's pretty up to date, although obviously, things are constantly changing with the story. You can see right here the areas of Southern California affected by specifically the Palisades fire. I think they might go over a couple of them, but the Palisades fire definitely being one of the worst ones. There was a fire in the Hollywood Hills for a period of time. Fortunately, that one was fought pretty aggressively by the firefighters and firefighting crew on the scene there. So thankfully, the real concern was that it was either going to come down into Sunset Boulevard or Hollywood Boulevard. And, obviously we've gone over Hollywood Boulevard in length before in these shows. Hollywood Walk of Fame, Chinese Drama Theater, the El Capitan, where the Oscars, Jimmy Kimmel's filmed and everything like that, or it could have had north where you get into Universal Studios and then into the greater Burbank area. Thankfully, that didn't happen, but still, right now the Palisades, I believe the last time I looked, it was only about 11% contained.
Sadly, say it didn't happen. You have to add the word yet, because there's going to be more winds apparently in the forecast. And, in the past, these things were blamed on homeless encampments and fallen power lines and stuff like that. Now it turns out they're finding out some of these people set them so that people will evacuate and they can come in and loot before the fire gets to a house. And they should shoot them, is what they should do, in my opinion. They should just plain shoot them.
I mean, it is really bad. I mean, you got roving bands of looters that are going around. Yes, starting fires for the particular purpose of looting, high-priced homes and businesses and so forth. I believe even Vice President Kamala Harris's home was attempted to be burglarized. They didn't count on the Secret Service being there, which
she's not having a good month, is she?
I don't think so. I don't think
anyway,
so, no. But
having lived through one of these years ago, you don't have any idea out there. You may think you do, but you don't. As I've mentioned on some of the other shows already, but maybe you missed it. When we evacuated our home and our community, the firemen who were there protecting it had literally been ordered, drop your hoses and get out, because the fire was coming. When we came back in, those big, heavy, strong brass fire hose nozzles.
Yeah.
They were melted flat as pancakes on the ground. That's how much heat is involved in these things. We had neighbors whose house was on the visible side not so damaged, but the house next to them had burned to the ground, and they had a big picture window aiming at that house. And from the outside, I was shocked. It looked good. And then he said, yeah, come inside. You come inside, and that window looks like a mosaic with all the cracks. And the reason was they had that UV film on the glass on the outside, and it held the glass together, but it didn't keep it from shattering from the heat. So there's all kinds of weird little things like that. And again, they told us that the embers at that time, and I understand they're even bigger with this one, size of golf balls, glowing heat, were blowing as far as 3 to 5 miles from the fire. And that's why you have all these other little outbreaks everywhere where maybe one house burns and they get it out. But you're not safe just because you're not in the middle of the official fire parameters. So, absolutely. And then, of course, there was some jerk flying his drone that hit one of the scooper airplanes that drops water and fire retardant on the fire and damaged it.
Right.
You people in your drones can just drone the heck out of there. I mean, oh boy, I get a good picture to put on TikTok. Yeah, right. Good for you. But we live in an irresponsible age, largely, and that's life.
That is right. And speaking of some of the firefighting that's been going on, the images are absolutely extraordinary. You can see kind of this greater view of the fires, and this isn't even all of them. These are just the ones most impactful to that 30-mile zone that we were talking about before. But there's a compilation here. Let's see, of some of the amazing stuff going on, trying to, prevent this stuff from really getting out of hand.
There you go. That's the big, based on a DC-10 or L1011 Super Scooper.
Now, some of this stuff isn't this fire, but you can see that.
That's how they work, and they're brilliant. Yeah. But even they cannot fly in 100-mile-an-hour winds. They had to wait for it to calm down, because to do so is not only dangerous to the pilots and the aircraft, but it's useless because they can't be as accurate as they wish to be. Yeah. Anyway, and a lot of those look like just water. A lot of them drop sort of a red water that has fire retardant in it. Mm-hmm. And they're not so much to hit the fire itself. They're to make a fire break of non-combustible material to give them a line to stand on. So
Right. That's the hope anyway, and that's hard to do
and
with
they're
things that
very
run around
good,
windows.
and it works. But gosh, uh,
It's tough. It is. It is. It is not great. Let's see here. Got a story of just some of the landmarks that have been unfortunately lost here. We'll go with the CNN article for now. As residents
that
in Los
one is
Angeles,
a real tragedy. That is a real tragedy. Will Rogers' house up there was a beautiful. I wonder if they show any pictures of before. They're just going to show the burnt remnants, or is there any
I was
pictures of what it looked like? Because I saw some online, and it was this classic, beautiful old home, and of course the polo grounds right there in front of it. Those of you who might have seen the Disney cartoon of all the stars playing polo and Donald, and that's the polo grounds at which Walt and everybody else used to go on Sundays and play polo, and still is or was. Yeah, but there's some
really.
pictures of the inside that really give you a sense of what a gorgeous, gorgeous home it was.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm getting them right now. Um, let's see here.
There, it just was this wonderful mixture of ranchiness and luxury, and with the Spanish touches, and it's gone. It's just gone.
Yeah.
That's sad. And the other thing, I haven't
It,
heard anything about it, but I'm certain that the Ringe House in Malibu, the Malibu Bay Museum, is probably gone. And that was the Ringe family were one of the old Spanish land grant families and owned all of Malibu at one time. And any of you who have seen a movie or pictures of the inside of LA City Hall, because it's been in so many movies, and have seen that decorative tile, that's where it came from, was the Malibu Bay tile factory that the Ringes owned, because there was something about the mud that came down out of the Chumash Indian lands that had a special value in making beautiful decorative tiles. And to give you an idea, they built this house for a beach house for the family, but also as a kind of demonstration. So when you walked in the house, for example, one of the bathrooms overlooked a coral tree. And we've all seen coral trees, you know what they look like, and they come in all different colors. Well, they matched the tile in the bathroom to the exact color of that tree. Okay. That's the level they went to, and they were just beautiful. The other thing I remember about visiting the Ringe House, the Malibu Bay Museum, in the garage, they had the actual history of Malibu stuff. They had ads from the 1920s for beachfront lots for $200 in Malibu. And my joke at the time was all these time travel movies, the only good reason to do a time travel back is to buy real estate in Southern California and then let it appreciate. So,
Could
but
you
of course
imagine?
now the game has changed because, I was watching, in fact, one of these home building shows I like that's called Grand Design. It's out of England. Oh, there's the Ringe House. Look at the tile. Look at the tile around the door. And when you walk through that door, the floor is tile, but the tile is as if there was a Persian carpet on the floor. There's even places where the fringe around the edge is kind of flipped over like somebody kicked it and they didn't smooth it back. I mean, that's the
Oh
detail.
man.
That's the level of detail of this tile. On the second floor, since it's on the beach, there's an outdoor deck. And there's this beautiful tile bench that you could sit in. Why? Because it's built into the lower fireplace and therefore it's heated from within. On a cold night, you could sit there and watch the waves even though it was cold outside. That was kind of the mini Hearst Castle, if you will. It was kind of the mini the other one besides this and Hearst Castle and the Winchester House among the houses of California that were all bespoke from top to bottom. There, that's outside of the pool area. Anyway, look, the vividness of the colors is just astounding, and I hope it's still there, but I don't know. I
I
don't know.
I don't know either. There's so many landmarks. There's so many different places that this has affected. Yeah, you were talking about the the land valuation of, the Malibu beach houses along kind of the other side of PCH there, and you have to think, like like I mean,
Well,
those are
the
probably
problem is, first of all, the insurance laws in California have been so restrictive that many insurance companies have just left the state. They said, we can't make money if you won't let us charge premiums commensurate with the cost of the claims that are potentially there because of the
sure.
risk. Secondly, you have to remember, I was mentioning this house building thing, and they have a spinoff in Australia I was watching the other day, and these people bought a house, but the deal was if they kept the foundation slab and one wall, they were grandfathered in as far as the permits and permissions. But if everything goes, suddenly this house built in the 60s, built in the 40s, built in the 50s, built in the 70s, has to suddenly built to 2024 code, which is 10 times more rigid, 10 times more expensive, and time consuming, because from the day you decide you're going to rebuild, if you have the money, it's going to maybe take years just to get the permits. How many people will say, I don't need this aggravation, and go to Vegas or somewhere else where there's no income tax, by the way? And the ripple effect on the neighborhood when my little community burned, down the street, there was a 7-Eleven, there was a meat market, there was a liquor store where everybody bought their lottery tickets. Suddenly, 80% of their customers were gone. Because if people had to move out and had to go somewhere and they had relatives in another state or another city, they didn't come back. They didn't come back. And suddenly those businesses all died because their customer base went away. There are all kinds of strange things that happen in these fires. I remember in our fire, there were a lot of cars in our neighborhood, which was a gated community. And the fire chief came in and said, there's got to be a lot of dead people here. Look at all the cars. Well, of course, what it was they were second cars and people were on vacation. And therefore, in fact, the firemen saved. One of my neighbors had a classic T-Bird, and they literally pushed it out of the garage and into the middle of one of the parks where it wouldn't get burned. It was within the community. But he said, there's got to be dead people here. Bring in the cadaver dogs, the sniffers. And they came in and they got a big hit. Oh my God, we found a burned person. No, they didn't. It was the lady who lived in the house's deceased husband's ashes, which were on an urn on the mantelpiece, that fell over in the fire. So there's all these bizarre events that happen. I mean, it just, you can't imagine it until you've been through it. And especially having to go through it now with the new restrictions that they will encounter. Even in our little community, one of the things that had been grandfathered in, but now had to be enforced, was the degree of setback from the houses next door was increased by, I think it was 2 feet or 3 feet. Well, suddenly you couldn't build the same square footage house on that spot unless you went up.
Right.
So that increased the cost. There's all these little things that compound in the aftermath of these things. So when you hear, oh, well, we're happy to report the fire's out, that's only the beginning of the terrible trials these people are going to go through. I'm sorry to say.
No. I think you're fine. I think there's a famous Adam Kroll rant going on right now where it's like, hey, the permit process is going to be fierce. And yes, it absolutely is. The regulations that have accrued over the past, 60 plus years from when these structures were originally built are astounding. Just never going to be the same, unfortunately. We do have a couple of super chats here and a couple of shout outs. Hello there, Follow the Bradley's Fun. Very much appreciate you stopping in right here. I know Ken Reinhardt was talking about no more Browns to lose. Yeah, I got good news. I got bad news for you, Ken. Good news is Steelers lost. Bad news is they were beat by the Ravens. So, divisional rivals, they're going forward there. And let's see here. We have Walter Tomaszewski with the $5. Thank you so much. Any museums, live music venues, landmark churches gone from the fire? How long do you give recovery and rebuilding, or is it too early to say? Well, that's what the whole show is all about. But rebuilding, recovery, Lou, I think we were just talking about it. I mean, it's just...
There is no way of knowing, and there is no way of knowing who will bother. and who
Right.
won't. If you're the only house standing, for example, you just have some
Yeah.
damage rather than total wipeout. You'll rebuild it hoping you can sell it, but do you want to live in a wasteland of empty lots? By the way, somebody's got to pay to clear the rubble off.
Yep.
Somebody's got to pay to bulldoze the junk away, and that's not cheap because a lot of houses have steel frameworks, and those girders are heavy and expensive and
Good point.
need to be picked up by cranes and crews, and it gets
And remember,
complicated.
California refuse. Okay, and all of that. That's a whole other thing too. That
Well,
you have to
in
concern yourself
our
with.
fire, we had some very big old pine trees around the property,
Mhm.
and the delay was caused by the various agencies, either the owners of the land or the city or the state, fighting over who would get the firewood when they chopped the trees down. That delayed the process by a month and a half. That's the level at which bureaucracy moves or doesn't. Walter, you asked about landmark. Well, I mentioned I don't know about the status of the Ridge House. I've heard about a couple of churches and synagogues that have gone and
Right,
recovering, rebuilding. My God, it will never be what it was. It might be
No.
better if 50 years from now. I saw a sad kind of meme where the girl says, "Oh my God, because of these people we had in charge, everything is ruined. They should all resign so I can vote in some more people with the exact same politics." So, but we're not a political show. We're just observers of the culture. But the culture
Absolutely.
has been dented and harmed irrevocably. It really has. And of course, Universal shut down for a day or two and then started up again.
Yep.
And I'm glad they did shut down for those 2 days, not because they were threatened, because I'll tell you what, Universal is real good about brush clearance on their property. Remember, the one big fire they had was not caused by a brush fire or in arson season. It was a security guard who felt disgruntled. And in those days, the security was farmed out to a company called Burns. And a Burns guy lit that fire that burned half the backlot down. And when I walked in there the next day, because I was doing a show there then, the wall of the building that had the King Kong thing in it, the blistering of the paint and the surface of that wall was just astounding from the heat that it had been subjected to. And of course, when they rebuilt the backlot streets, the Court of Miracles and a lot of the New York stuff, although they were new, they followed the exact same street patterns as the old ones. Why? Not because they couldn't make them better, but because what was still there were the electric, the gas, the water lines. And to reroute all of that would have been much more expensive and difficult. So, because when you see streets on the backlot, if you take a tour, remember, they can put dirt on them and make them gas lights and turn them into 1850 or whatever, and they can redress them in any period. But to do that, you got to have the infrastructure there. So there's that. I remember in that fire, the big thing that burned, they were making that terrible Sylvester Stallone comedy picture. I forget what it was called. It was somebody's name. Anyway, they had about 18 classic 1920s, 1930s cars on those streets, and they all went. That was a tragedy too.
Yeah, a lot of
they shot the rest. They picked up shooting of the movie in Florida because those streets pretty much had the same fronts, but it wasn't the same without those cars.
Right.
Happily forgettable movie.
I'm trying to get, because now we're talking about Universal.
Well, did we all freeze or did just you? I think you froze, Vash. Well, I'll fill in. Vash was worried his computer was going to do funny things. I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing a couple of questions not on the fire, which I'm happy to answer too. Somebody asked if I ever met up or worked with Paul Chatto. No, never did. Sorry about that. I wish I had. That would have been fun. But of course, he was up there in the Great White North, and I was down here in the Great Hot South. Um, so, and as I mentioned, one thing we learned was that the embers, so-called. Oh, look, there's two Vash in one. Uh, anyway, that the embers would carry 3 to 5 miles in the wind, and that's why you'd have all these other houses burn all over LA. I don't know if we want to leave the fire or come back to the fire, but there's somebody asking about Thunderball. We could talk a lot about Thunderball if we want to. But,
well, let's let me go ahead and thank Walter for the $5 there. And I think we have one more here that we want to go ahead and make sure that we get to. Go and Shogi with $5. Thank you so much, kind sir. Another problem is tax brackets. You buy your house in the 50s, you've locked into a property tax rate.
Rebuild when now, Prop 13 came in. Until then, no. But yes.
That's a big point too. For the thousands of people that have been displaced from losing their homes, that, well, for a large majority of them, it's going to be that way because they're just simply not going to be able to build in the same place where they lived before. It's too expensive, too many regulatory hurdles, and this is why we're saying, it's never truly gonna be the same, and it's very, very heartbreaking. By the way, Golden Shogi, I just wanted to point out, I believe Ron from Follow Bradley's Fun, Golden Shogi, and Tom F. We'll be looking at putting some more moderators on the chat right here, making sure that the chat stays in line and is the way we want it to be run. So
still growing, still expanding, still exploring. So
exactly. So we'll. I wanted to go ahead and assure you that yes, we're gonna be expanding the mod list. That's for sure. You were mentioning Lou. Somebody talking about Thunderball.
Yeah, somebody wanted to know about Thunderball, and then somebody mentioned one of the people involved. Thunderball is a very interesting case. In fact, it's why there is Never Say Never Again. Back when Fleming was hitting his stride, he was looking for plots, and this guy named Kevin McClory got involved in the process. Other people had been involved. For example, people don't know that Fleming worked with, why can't I suddenly think of his name, but the guy that did The Man from U.N.C.L.E. That is why Napoleon Solo is the name, by the way, originally, of the guy that gets crushed in the car by Oddjob in Goldfinger. That's Napoleon Solo, but they used the name again. But Kevin McClory was involved in the plotting of the book Thunderball. So when they went to make the movie, they had to give him a credit, a portion of the pie, so to speak. And he then claimed he had the right to remake it. Obviously, the Broccolis said, no, you don't. And there was a major legal hassle between them. And basically, he got to remake only that, and only separately, and only in a limited way. And that is why Never Say Never Again is technically a remake of Thunderball. And so if you watch Never Say Never Again, you'll see Thunderball's plot in there. That's the short version. It's a very long, complicated legal story. But on the making of it is kind of interesting on Thunderball. All those scenes in the underwater caves in Thunderball? Well, they were done in these wonderful caves in the, I think it's in the Bahamas. Might be some of the other islands down there. But these caves are huge and beautiful and lovely. But if you want to make a movie, you got to light them up, right? So right. What do? You bring your generator and you run your cable and you put your lights. The problem was that the floor of the cave, after centuries probably, is about 6 feet deep of very fine silt. And if you even slightly disturb it, it makes the water, which is crystal clear otherwise, horribly foggy for at least another 6-8 hours while it all settles back out again. So they made that mistake once and then realized what they had to do. They took trash bags, filled them with air, and literally hung the lights from the ceiling so they wouldn't disturb the floor, so they could swim through there without disturbing it. Lots of other production stuff on that movie.
Oh,
It was
whoa.
it was a wonderful movie, I think, and certainly no less wonderful that because well, that whole crazy, wonderful fight scene between all the scuba guys at the end with the scooters and Largo and the Disco Volante, the flying saucer, the ship that breaks into two pieces and becomes a hydrofoil. And anyway, it's they had to keep outdoing themselves, and this was the way of outdoing what they had done before.
Sure.
I think the best part of Never Say Never Again, aside from seeing Connery in the role again, is what's his name? The German actor playing the bad guy. He is so marvelously crazy in a way that a dubbed Adolfo Celli could never be. Anyway, God, this is all sort of then and now pictures. Look at Luciana. She was so great in that movie.
Mm.
And of course, when he's dancing with her on the dance floor in the big carnival, the bad guys shoot at him and he literally uses her as a shield. And she gets shot. And he goes over to a table and says, "Would you look after my friend? She's just dead." And puts her in a chair and walks away.
I don't know if you can quite do that now, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, well, those were the
funny
days.
gag. Yeah. Good stuff. Love the classic Bond films. Really, really awesome stuff. I know the development on the new era of Bond is kind of, I don't know, been pushed back a couple times.
Basically, because when the people from Amazon, who basically had the distribution rights because they bought MGM,
right,
told Ms. Broccoli, who now owns the franchise after her father passed away and has been doing a pretty good job until that last movie, which was awful, in my opinion. But when he told her, "Well, see, we don't think Bond is a hero," she looked at them and said, "Are you nuts?" and walked out of the room. I think she said more than that. So if you're dealing with a executive producer, whatever you want to call it, the distributor who says that your hero isn't the hero, where do you go from there? Where do you even begin to go from there, except to say, that's it. That's it. And so a 30-year, is it 30? Oh, more than that. What am I saying? 50 years of the first and most successful franchise in the history of the movies. It's over because of sensitivity. There's a DEI scalp on the wall.
Yeah.
And when you consider the original movie, Dr. No, which has it been here yet? I know we did it. The genre guys did it, but when you figure that movie was made for about $900,000 with a charming, beautiful nobody, it was also the beginning of Ursula Andress's career as an actress. She was a model, and they got submitted pictures of every beautiful girl in the world to play that character of Honey Child Ryder. And you know one of the big reasons that Ursula Andress got the part? The picture that they sent of her hair was wet. And since this character comes out of the surf and is always wet, and I mean that in a purely chaste way, she got the part. She got the part.
Yes, it is on the channel. It is episode 18, Dr. No.
There you go. So if you want to see what the genre guys had to say about it, please join us there.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat right now. You can enjoy Genre Guys episode on that, and LEW'S excellent commentary as always.
Oh well, and also Lauren and Hangry, we each bring something to the party in a very wonderful way, I think.
For sure. And you talk about how difficult it is to make some of these Bond films, and how because you have rights holders and so forth that have a say in how these things are developed. It's one of the reasons why Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, who would otherwise one would want to craft a Bond film, we're like, maybe we should make our own instead and have full control of that. That's where Indiana Jones came from. So
Yeah.
there you go.
And of course, Saltzman and Broccoli wisely bought the rights. And what really, really made the Bond books suddenly explode was when JFK said he liked them. And of course, anything JFK or Jackie liked, everybody else wanted to read. So
there we go.
And of course, in case you didn't know, Fleming had a house called Goldeneye in Jamaica. And when he was writing the first book, he said he wanted the guy to have the most plain, ordinary name ever, that nothing fancy. And a very famous bird watching book on Caribbean birds is by a guy named James Bond. And so that's where he got the name. And of course, the rest, as they say, is fiction history.
Wow. That's really something.
James Bond's Book of Tropical Birds or something like that. I forget the exact title. So that's the way these legends are made. And
I wanted to go ahead and highlight this just real fast. Eddie Soto had some commentary on some of these, some of the destruction of these famous landmarks here in Palisades, Brentwood, and so forth. Eddie Soto spent 25 years raising our kids in Brentwood and the Palisades, weekends in Malibu and at Will Rogers Park. Grateful to at least have found them, have the fond memories of all these wonderful places. Every day is a gift. It's a question of how we'll use it. So tragic. So definitely the Will Rogers Park and the estate and so forth. That's, you have a lot of people who are who have fond memories of that location, and it's really, really sad to see.
He gave, to the government as a park. Rogers was an interesting guy too, but that's a longer story. No, it always bothered me. I don't know if you ever saw the musical of Will Rogers' life. That I think it was one of the Carradines starred as Will Rogers, and there was this thing about the depression hits, and his kid asks him, "Are we in trouble, Dad?" And he says, "No, we'll be fine, but other people are going to be hurt." And I'm going, "Well, then, shut up about it." And I don't know if he ever really said that. I kind of doubt it, but he was a unique character, that's for sure.
I suppose anyway. So. We have another landmark here. Let's see. The McNally House in Altadena, California. Do you know anything about this particular location?
I don't, but it is typical of the style of the era. We could look at, which hasn't burned yet, as far as I know, the Magic Castle House is similar. Although this kind of reminds me of the Teddy Roosevelt House on the East Coast, this kind of shingle style, but it's beautiful. Look at that. Look at the way they built in those days.
Exquisite.
All you can say is incredible. Tragedy. Just tragedy.
Oh, it is so unbelievably sad. Also, too, filming locations and mansions and houses that have stood in for, let's say, your characters in certain films and television shows and so forth. Well, we have a story like that as well. New York Post. $125 million Succession mansion destroyed in L.A. Wildfires' most expensive home in the Palisades had 18 beds rented for $450,000 per month. The most expensive home in Pacific Palisades has been destroyed in the Los Angeles wildfires. The 18-bedroom mansion, which featured sweeping views out to the Pacific Ocean, was worth an eye-popping $125 million per the Daily Mail, who first reported on its incineration. The mega mansion, which is owned by Luminar Technologies, boss Austin Russell, 29, was on the market to rent for $850,000 per month when the blaze broke out. The property was featured on the fourth season of the hit HBO show Succession in 2023, serving as the luxury pad occupied by the fictional Roy siblings. That is tough as well.
Compared
that's
to the
not
other
cheap.
one, this is hideous, but it's still impressive, in my
Oh yeah.
opinion.
Oh,
Architecturally.
I don't disagree with you, but um,
And
that's
thank God they
expensive.
saved both the Getty Center and the Getty Malibu villa.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I actually had a souvenir of the Getty Malibu uh, home. Getty had his own private zoo. And through a series of events I won't bore you with because it would be exposing certain things, I had his bear. He had a bear
What?
that went to a taxidermist, and I got it, a bear rug. We used to
Okay.
call it my Getty bear instead of a teddy bear. But he actually had his own private zoo up there. So if you think
Wow.
Wells was making everything up when he did Citizen Kane, no, these guys really lived that way because they could. So uh,
That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Um,
But unfortunately, the bug critters here in Tennessee decided they liked it better, and it has been destroyed, consumed, whatever. But
mm,
those were the days.
those were the days. Let's see here. We have Palisades Charter High School.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
significant
yeah.
damage to the Palisades Charter High School, though the main campus building still stands. Founded in 1961 and built for a reported $6 million, the high school currently serves some 3,000 students to the Los Angeles area, though they were not in session this week. Famous credits, you can see De Palma's 1976 adaptation of Carrie, starring Sissy Spacek
Basic.
at
Yeah.
as the outcast teen is perhaps Molly High's most recognizable credit. It also played high schools in the 2003 remake of Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, Kirsten Dunst's movie Crazy Beautiful, and Hathaway film Havoc, television series Teen Wolf, and American Vandal, and the music video for Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You. It just goes on and on and on in terms of the alumni here. Very tragic as well. Man, it's just the scope of this stuff is just unthinkable. It's hard
By
to.
the way, when you go down to the next one about the Will Rogers house, which we talked
Mhm,
about,
mhm.
you wonder how the hell did a guy make so much money he could have all of this from radio? Answer: there was no income tax in those days.
Mm.
The government was funded by, are you ready? Tariffs
What?
entirely. That's right. Because that was, that's how Bob Hope owned half the San Fernando Valley, for God's sakes. Uh, Anyway,
That's true.
Topanga Ranch Motel, well, that's sort of yeah, Mannix, Remington Steele. Everybody shot in all these places because of that show we did about the zone. It was part of the deal. And you could
Mhm.
have people show up on the spot instead of having to bust them and take care of them and all that.
Right.
Uh,
There was the Bunny Museum. Yes, the Bunny
the
Museum.
Bunny Museum.
Yeah. Well, it really looks like somebody's basement. They did
Yeah,
up
well,
in all kind of bunny art, but
I, I,
yeah.
I'm sorry. If it was the other kind, I'd be more worried. But anyway,
I,
keep going. What else we got?
we know what you're talking about. The Hacks
Tax
Mansion,
mention.
1915, a Spanish colonial revival mansion that played Deborah Vance's Los Angeles home in the HBO series Hacks.
McNally House we saw that with that round, wonderful roof. Farnsworth Park. Oh my, yeah.
A picturesque 15-acre park with a playground, amphitheater, walking paths, and a baseball field was damaged in the Eden fire. Los Angeles County Parks Department
Band
wrote on
camp.
Instagram.
1 year in band camp. Oh wow, that's a famous place. Well,
Really, really tough stuff. But that's not the only thing that's been disruptive about this whole fire. Well, I mean, I say disruptive. It's I mean, life altering, destroying, just horribleness. But also too, survive till 25. Well, surviving will have to wait just a little bit longer because they are halting productions of many shows. Now, this obviously has changed, and I'm sure more shows will either continue production, whereas other shows will continue to delay production. Just depends on where everything is. But variety here with LA Fire's halt production on Fallout Season 2, Abbott Elementary, Grey's Anatomy, Hacks, Suits LA, and more television series. Productions came to a halt in Los Angeles on Wednesday as fires continue to sweep across the neighborhoods of the Pacific Palisades, Altadena, and Samar. The film
Now,
LA.
wait a minute. Look at the fourth paragraph. If this doesn't tell you something about how things have changed, NBC Universal said production has been suspended on Hacks, Luke, Ted, Swoops, L.A., and Happy's Place with Reba McEntire. No movies are affected, as all of NBCU's feature films are shooting outside of L.A., where they can get better tax credits.
There you go. Well, I mean, yeah, that's and it's one of the, as the budgets grow and as things like tax rebates become more attractive, that's what's going to happen. For sure. Amazon has postponed the restart of production on season 2 of Fallout, which was filming in Santa Clarita area. It has been tentatively scheduled for Friday. Not sure if they restarted there. CBS Studios shut down NCIS Origins After Midnight, Papa's House, The Neighborhood, tapings for After Midnight. And at Disney 20th, we talk about Disney a lot here, shut down Dr. Odyssey, Grey's Anatomy, and Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Well, and of course, part of that with these live shows, and indeed with the other productions, is getting the crews and cast and the audiences to a place and home again. They don't want you all in that theater when they decide to evacuate the neighborhood and then have to, same reason that Universal shut down for 2 days. It's all swell to be up on that hilltop, but if that hilltop is surrounded by fire, you're stuck there, and they don't want to have to deal with that. So better to just shut it down, and that was a wise choice.
I think so. I think it was a wise choice, and
but it doesn't mean the studio itself was threatened, is my point. It means that the area around it was bad, and therefore better safe than sorry.
And we have a bunch of what I would call Southern California working class communities over there in the Palisades and so forth that contribute to a lot of these productions as well.
Well, in the Valley, certainly. I wouldn't call Palisades working class unless I had a very broad definition thereof.
This is why I said Southern California working class. But I do see your point. Obviously, those are very expensive homes and very expensive places.
But again, a lot of people bought them cheap and just stayed, and they grew up around them.
Right.
Back in the 90s, lots and lots and lots of people in LA who had owned their homes since right after World War II and were getting to retirement age looked and said, God, I either built or bought this house for $25,000, $35,000, $50,000 all those years ago, and I can get $1 million or $1.5 million for it. Screw this. I'm moving to Vegas to a condo for $50,000 or $75,000. And because of that, Vegas became a major retirement community from LA, the same way that Florida had always been for New York and New Jersey. And because it was also a couple hours drive away from the kids and the grandkids and all of that.
Correct.
And also because of that, and I know this because my grandmother wound up there, they started to have very, very good gerontological medical facilities, specializing in old people disease, and great pick you up, take you to the doctor, bring you back stuff long before that was commonplace as it is now. There was no Uber, there was no Lyft, there was just these services in Vegas. So there you go. Or people moving to Arizona. Either way.
Oh, yes. I have a lot of California transplants out here, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the thing. The people living in a lot of these houses, either they're, this is a gross generalization, but you're either just really wealthy in order to afford that house to buy it within the last 10 years, or you've simply had it for extended period of time when the buy-in rate was a lot lower than it is now. That's the thing. Like when these people are displaced, they very well are displaced. They're gone, which is extremely unfortunate. It obviously has a ripple effect for the entire community.
Well, yeah. Well, Pamela.
Let me read it real fast. Hollywood was
Yeah.
already dying. Do you think fires will further damage the film industry? Go ahead, Lou.
The industry has outgrown Hollywood physically a long time ago. There were announcements recently that Warner Brothers is going to spend $3 billion to build a studio outside of Vegas. We have Atlanta as a production center. We have Vancouver, and in a funny way, the harbinger of all of this was really, really good high-speed internet. Because I remember seeing years ago documentaries on the making of some of the Star Wars stuff where George Lucas is sitting in Marin auditioning actors in New Zealand in real time because they could do it. Couldn't do that 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So the issue, as far as Hollywood ever being abandoned, it is not about production as much as it is about attitudes. When there began to be studios in Florida, I think Burt Reynolds really started the first one in Jupiter, and then of course Universal, and then others. And I was doing shows, and people were saying, "Well, are we going to move these shows and the people down there?" And the answer was they might shoot them there, but they wouldn't technically base the production there. Why? Because everybody who's got a show, no matter how successful, is always looking for their next show. And it was a case of out of sight, out of mind for them to be considered for a next show if they didn't have a base in Hollywood. And that means it's less about where the office is and more about where the restaurants are and where the bars are and where the parties are and where the networking, the people-to-people networking that you can't do on Zoom and you can't do on Skype. So there you go. And of course, when the Hollywood studios started getting bought by these mega corporations, you remember Mel Brooks spoofed Gulf and Western as in Gulf and Devour. But I remember Sony bought Columbia, and Mitsubishi, or pardon me, Matsushita bought Universal for a while. And and the great, when we had our 10-minute strike in the Directors Guild, the great line that our leader had written for him by our wonderful writer, Lionel Chetwynd, he said what these major industrial corporations don't understand about the movie business is that in our business, the capital equipment goes home every night. It's not about the sound stages. It's not about the cameras. It's about people. And so the question is, does the entire creative community say, no, we'd rather live somewhere else? Then maybe, just maybe, if they all choose one somewhere else, where they're all still in proximity to each other to do the deals and press the flesh and all that. But until then, no, it's still going to be there.
I would think that if you had maybe some major studios impacted by what's to come, because these fires are not out, a lot of them are still raging. Palisades, like the map says right here, 11% containment. We know it's going to get worse.
The majors that might be in the path would be Universal and Warner Brothers,
right?
Because the others aren't there. They're in Culver City and Hollywood proper, and it would be a far stretch for it to ever get down into Gower Gulch and into Paramount and into all of that.
Right.
But what can I say?
I would say, though, if you had a couple of them go up, it's like, okay, well, now do we rethink this whole...
Yeah, well, what's interesting is the Malibu ranch property that was once a major location. That's where the models were shot for Towering Inferno. And I know because a friend of mine gripped that show, and I've got pictures of him up on a crane looking at this model of the building that is really the Carnelian room, which technically I think it's a Bank of America Center in San Francisco that was the building in Towering Inferno. But it was all shot up there. So life imitates art or something like that.
I believe there was a studio back in the early 20th century that used to reside in the Palisades, and I think that was
In the
taken up.
Palisades, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Like a
Not in the
backlot or
Palisades.
something.
I,
Anyway,
I, there might have been a soundstage somewhere, but studio,
mm,
that land is too expensive for that.
that's
Now
very
down
true.
in Manhattan Beach, there's that whole collection of stages that basically was built for, what's his name? The guy that did L.A. Law and um, Ally McBeal. And anyway, there have been, Hollywood has been building sound stages a lot and getting rid of backlots a lot.
Yep.
Lots of big sections of Universal that used to be backlot false fronts are now sound stages
Yep.
because the game has shifted. And when you want to go on location, you go on location. The old days, Samuel Goldwyn, who had many of these funny quotes, he used to say, "A rock is a rock, a tree is a tree, shoot it in Griffith Park." So
Yeah, exactly. Why are we?
why are we going all the way to hell and gone to make this movie? But
Sure.
we do. And now if they'll pay us to do it through these credits, well. And unlike the UK, they don't have to disclose all the numbers. So
That's a good point. That's a good point right there. I know, Mr. Gavin Newsom, I know he was trying to pass, I believe he successfully did, a series of tax credits or tax rebate offers for productions.
well, there already have been
in
some.
Hollywood,
They
but
just want to raise the number to try and be
right.
competitive. By the
Yeah.
way, none of those schemes anywhere for movies, for building stadiums, has ever proven to be a good investment by the taxpayers. They have never created more taxpayer revenue in jobs and taxes and fees than they cost. Not one. Not one. So
I don't know, Lou. $650. I'm sorry, $650 million for Andor UK. I mean, come on. There's got to be something there. No, I'm joking. It's a crazy number.
well,
for
but
a
that
television
wasn't
show.
all there, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the above the line people, and that's not the production people in the States, and that's not anybody that isn't directly employed. That's the excuse
Yep.
that the government gives for doing it is, well, we're
Yeah.
going to have more local people hired and peripheral industry. Remember, when Hollywood shuts down because of a strike or because of a fire or anything else, it's not just the people who work in the business. It's their dry cleaner, it's their dog washer, it's their local bodega, whatever. I knew lots of people, grips, electricians, camera guys, who actually lived in Palmdale, Acton. But then when production was on for television, they'd rent a 3 or 4 bedroom apartment in Hollywood, a bunch of them, and spend the week in town and go home on the weekends because it was easier than the commute and because it was cheaper in the long run. So there's that. There's that.
The 30-mile zone. Very interesting place for sure.
I never knew why they picked 30 as the number, but they had a reason and it made sense. So had to have enough. And remember, California, Southern California uniquely has such a variety of topography between the mountains and the sea and the desert and the hills and residential areas and lots of choices within that area. Lots of choices.
Right.
Because people don't really understand when you see how many acres this fire is and that fire is. It's huge. It's the worst ever. And it's a tiny fraction of the acres that are there. The city of LA is roughly 250 some odd square miles. The county of LA is 455 square miles. And if you add in the parts of Riverside County and Orange County and Ventura County, basically Los Angeles is a megalopolis that goes from, well, let's say Camp Pendleton down on the south end to the outskirts of Barstow on the way to Vegas on the northeast, to Palm Springs, Palm Desert on the east side, and all the way up through into Santa Barbara, certainly Oxnard. That's a big damn thing. And of course, most of it, except for right in the downtowns of LA and some of the others, is not high rise.
Yeah.
So people are spread out. I mean, when I was having friends visit from New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, and they'd come visit me living in West LA and say, "Well, let's go to dinner someplace. What's a good place?" I said, "Well, I know this place down in uh, Carlsbad, let's say, or Malibu, or any place out." And they'd say, "Where's that?" And I'd say, "About 30, 40 minutes down the freeway." And they said, "Each way for dinner? Are you crazy?" Because where they lived, you born, you grew up, you went to school, you lived, and you died in 30 blocks.
Yeah.
But back when the traffic wasn't so bad and the freeways were great and the population wasn't totally insane, it wasn't a big deal to do that. I've often said I would go down. I had a friend who ran a company down in Garden Grove, just south of Disneyland, and I'd go down there and visit with him. And it got to be 3, 4 o'clock. I said, "Well, heck, I'm not going to get on the freeway now." And I'd take my annual pass and go into Disneyland for a few hours and go over to the hotel and go to Granville's, the great, wonderful restaurant, and do them out of a steak and a good bottle of Mondavi, and hit the freeway at about 8, 9 o'clock and be home, you know. And that was a day. And that's what you
Yeah.
could do. You really could do it. You can't anymore.
No, the population
Those were the
way
days.
too dense. It's crazy, and that's obviously made some logistical problems surrounding all this much worse.
Which you could fix, you know. If you're going to build so many houses, you got to know they're going to need water, so you don't drain the reservoirs and blow up dams, which they actually did in the last few years. Blew them up rather than having already been funded way in advance to build more. Do that.
Yeah. Yeah. As it said, Dan's Life of the Kingdom, 23,000 acres. Yeah, Walt Disney World is approximately 28,000. That's insane. That's one of those fires, by the way. I mean, total, you're talking about 40,000 plus acres with all of this. I mean, it's a massive area of land that's been impacted by what's been going on here.
Because there's nothing to stop it. There's no water in the fire hydrants. There's no ability to. Now there is a little, but to fly over those planes and helicopters because of the winds.
Mm-hmm.
And once it starts, when they talk about contain, they mean actually having a perimeter that holds.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Where it doesn't spread further.
Where it doesn't hopscotch over you into the next spot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's so sad. It is. This is a witch's brew of.
And afterwards, the scams, the legal scams. I don't know. You want me to tell that whole sorry story now or not?
Please. Yeah, well, we can go into
okay. So after our fire, we of course had insurance. I don't know how many people heard about my calling it my Hollywood fire, even though we weren't in Hollywood. And the reason is because the first thing you have to do is register with FEMA, which is about a 40-minute automated telephone call. You know, they say, you say yes, blah, 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 for 40 minutes. And then they tell you they'll be in touch for their inspector to come out and look at your house and take pictures and figure out where you stand. And I got the call, and she said, "My name's Gina, and I'm your FEMA inspector, and how's Tuesday," or whatever it was. And so because I wasn't in the house, because we couldn't live there, there was no permission to live there because of power and gas and everything else. But I had to meet her out there. And this a gremlin she was driving pulls up in front, and this small, very athletic looking, wiry young middle lady, blonde lady gets out and she says, "Hi, I'm Gina." I said, "Hi, come on in." And at that time I had a lot of very rare Disney stuff, including that thing over your shoulder. But I had a big one of Pirates of the Caribbean, the original, the map with the pirate. You've seen it probably. Right by the front door. And she walks in the door and she looks at all this Disney stuff and she says, "Boy, that brings back memories." I said, "Yeah, for all of us." She said, "No, you don't understand." You know what she did before she was a FEMA inspector? She was Tinkerbell coming down that wire every night. She had been a Ringling aerialist, And for about 12 or 15 years, her name is Gina Rock, and she's a charming, lovely lady. I haven't seen her since. But she was Tinkerbell. So I always tell people I had a Hollywood fire. How Hollywood? Because Tinkerbell was my FEMA inspector. And when she got ready to leave, she said that she stepped out and she looked up the hill behind me and she said, well, it's a good thing my next job is to climb that hill and take a picture of a homeless encampment that's burned out so the government can buy them a new tent. And so she gets to her car and I lean in the window and I said, by the way, Gina, she says, yes. I clapped. She said, what are you doing? I said, I believe in you, Tink. Get me some money. And that was the last I saw of her. And they gave me $450. Why? Because I had insurance. I was a good guy. The people who didn't do the right thing got all kinds of money. But anyway. So afterwards, however, your insurance company, right? And we had insurance. First of all, they give you a check for a few grand just to tide you over, which is nice. But then they tell you, listen, because my house did not burn down. It was affected by smoke damage because the firemen, to make sure we were out, busted in the window on the back door. And then, of course, it acted like a suction and sucked smoke all through the home. And we had 2 sheds that needed replacing outside that got singed. But it got pretty close. And they said, well, we have this restoration company, specialists in post-fire restoration. And what they'll do, they'll come out to your house and they barcode every single item in your house and ship it away. And they'll clean it and store it and bring it back when you're restored the house. I thought, great, I don't have to find one. But of course, the insurance company and this outfit were hand in glove. Now, we had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Others around us were smaller, larger, more stuff, less stuff. And when I talked to my neighbors, I found that every single one of them got the same thing as an estimate from this company of what it was going to cost, what the insurance was going to pay, all within about $100 or $2 of the insurance coverage. In other words, the insurance company had told them in advance, you can bill for this much and no more, and you'll get paid. But the insurance company goofed. Apparently, the normal way they do it is they send the check directly to them, but instead they sent me the check and the bill, which let me peruse what they were charging for. Well, it was full of fraud. For example, as I told you, there was no power, and they had to come in and have their computer and their barcode spitter outer to do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So they had a generator out in the street. They were doing my house and 5 others around me all at the same time. Every individual house got charged rental on that generator on their bill. Little scams like that and some bigger ones. So when I saw that and said, well, I'm not going to pay for this crap. You're cheating me. And they said, well, then you don't get your stuff back. It's got it all locked up. We're holding it hostage. I had to get a lawyer and sue them. And eventually they complied, as they say. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on because let me tell you, if anybody tells you that they are a specialist in fire recovery, they're moving men with a scrub brush. Trust me. It doesn't mean you don't have to deal with them, but you can do it with your eyes open. And I hope maybe that helps some of the people that are going through this who didn't get burned out entirely.
Yeah, and that's the thing about these insurance things. Obviously, we're hearing about insurance being dropped, but I guess I was informed about a scam that was going on a little bit where insurance companies were flying drones over people's houses, look at their roofs, saying that you gotta redo your roof within 30 days or else we'll drop coverage. And a lot of coverage was dropped that way as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff where it's like, what is going on here? It really is tragic. It really is sad. We didn't even get to, by the way, all the homes that have been lost from all these celebrities. Paris Hilton, Jeff Bridges, Mark Hamill, the list goes on and on and on. Anthony Hopkins. So we will... I'm sure we'll have more to say about this. Again, a lot of these fires are still going on, and like Lou said at the top of the show, the winds will carry these even further than where they are now, and that's what people are attempting to prepare for the next couple of days. I believe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And may I say, meanwhile, let's not forget the people that were so totally destroyed in the Carolinas, who are here in this freezing cold weather with no shelter. Um, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. In fact, as a kid, we lived in Baldwin Hills when there was a dam that broke and flooded out the whole neighborhood. So you get to be a certain age. Hopefully, you haven't endured all this, but if you have, or you have friends who have, you understand the impact in ways that people who aren't exposed to it just don't. And I should close with my you can run but you can't hide story, which is this. All of these different things, you think, well, where can you go? Well, this is a true story. There were a group of about 4 or 5 families living on the far outskirts of Winnipeg, Canada. Farm families, small community. But every year they saw Winnipeg growing in their direction and more farms being turned into tract homes. And they didn't want that lifestyle. So they got their money together and they hired a research firm. And they said, we will go anywhere in the world, as long as they speak English. Find us the place and they listed their likes and their dislikes and everything else. And when they found it for them, by God, they moved. They moved their livestock. They moved their property, everything, to the Falkland Islands 3 months before the war started. So you can run, but you can't hide.
I guess not. I looked into this a little bit because it might have been an erroneous report. Sorry. I think there was updated news that came out that said Mark Hamill's house did survive, and looks like we have an report.
And I see that James Wood's house happily survived. He thought it was gone. Yes. It's damaged, but he'll fix it. So
yeah, and that's the thing too. The tough thing, even if your house does survive, it's not like you can just move back in and here you go. There's a lot of, like, you might not have access to water, you might not have access to gas.
Well, plus, in order to legally move in, you have to get a certificate of occupancy from the authorities. They won't let you move in until they've inspected and decided it's habitable according to their standards, which may not be yours.
Yeah, there's a lot of fog of war, that's for sure. But we'll keep you updated on all of it as best we can. I know I'm tracking multiple stories and seeing where this goes. Also, too, I've got friends in near this Palisades fire who have just been actually given evacuation orders. So, and we have people that you have seen on this channel here that might be in the way of some of these things if it moves in different directions. Theme Park Wizard, for example, he's within the realm of all of this. Orange Grove 55 as well. So please, support those channels.
And we don't know what's going to happen. And supposedly next week the winds are coming back even more intensely. And we don't know. We just don't know.
Absolutely.
That's life on Earth, and that's not about any climate change or anything else. It's about being prepared. But when you cut the budget of the fire department, and when you turn off the reservoirs, and you stop saving water for such an emergency, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow.
It's so tragic. Dan's Life of the Kingdom. I did not know that. Please support these channels, support these people. Our hearts go out to every single person who has been impacted by all of this. Again, usually Hollywood Backlot's all about talking about much happier news and the things that we love. But
I'm going to say, if you want to distract yourself, here's the place, because we've got now books and music and movies and all the things that were meant to enlighten and inform and entertain you. And we try to keep this all genuinely useful, rather than just the silly fluff of a news release to announce a new popcorn bucket or a new renovation of a bathroom, for God's sakes. Or what was the one I just saw about? Oh, well, there's all kinds of bargains at Disney World. And I'm going, oh, really? That's interesting. What are they? Well, it's now only X $100,000 to do whatever it was, where it used to be X 1,001. Sorry, but homie, don't play that game, as the saying goes.
I guess not. All right, Pamela. Thank you so much for that correction there, for sure. But no, seriously, hey, this is definitely the place to take your mind off of things. Hopefully, we can provide a little bit of respite for you. Our coverage will continue here on that pod place, that park place, WW Pro. Definitely check us out on all of those channels. Lou, what do you got coming up?
Well, let's see. We just did a double header again on recording for the genre guys. We did, as I said, Airplane, and we also did The Social Network, the Mark Zuckerberg story, which is interesting in light of current events.
Sure.
And we got a few other things on the agenda, and of course, being here with you, and then occasionally on the other shows too. But I just want to say that stuff I mentioned about all the aftermath stuff. If you're a million miles away from this thing, but you've got a friend there who's thinking about rebuilding and what have you, tell them that story, would you? Just so they're aware of what goes on. It's not that you can do a lot about it, but you can sure as hell keep an eye on it and not be stunned that your insurance company and these other companies are all playing with each other and not on your behalf, really. I mean, oh, well, net, I guess you get your stuff back and clean, but the scam is just endless.
It's a lot.
These people invented never let a tragedy or whatever go to waste long before the politicians officially announced it.
That's a good point. I know we're going to be trying to help out ourselves. So tomorrow I'm going to be participating, I believe, in a charity stream hosted by Theme Park Wizard. Try to help out in this situation right here. I know Pro might have something coming up as well. So, follow us on Twitter or X, wherever you would prefer your platforms to be, and we'll have updates there, I'm sure. But thank you so much for everybody joining here on a very, hopefully respectful Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Very much appreciate it. You can check out Lou, like we said before, on the Genre Guys that are released to members only on the WWE Pro channel. There will be Genre
Play the
Guys
music we gave you the link to get in the mood, and
Absolutely.
then watch the show, because here it comes.
That's it. That's exactly it. All those links are going to be in the description. And thank you so much for watching Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Take care, folks. We'll see you next week.
Bye.